Greetings everyone. In this video, I will be covering the topic of the Four Agreements. Some of you may have read the book, The Four Agreements by Don Miguel Ruiz. This is a book that's based on traditional Toltec wisdom, the spiritual tradition of those native peoples of the Central American area where the Toltec lived. Now, in this book, Ruiz kind of boils that wisdom down to some very basic principles or ideas about how we can live our life in a more liberated manner, where we are not as bound by the psychological influences of the people around us, as well as by the insecurities of our own ego and things of that nature. To briefly summarize what the Four Agreements are, one agreement says to be impeccable with your word. A second agreement says don't take things personally. The third one tells us don't make assumptions. And the fourth agreement is to always do your best. Now, the reason for these particular agreements is that as human beings, we have tendencies and conditionings that actually lead us to do the opposite of what these agreements are telling us to do. So they're tools or guides to help us reprogram ourselves. We have a tendency often to be careless with our words. We may speak negatively to ourselves and to others when it's really not productive to do that. We're often also imprecise in communicating what we're trying to communicate. We may be careless with our words in that way, by not really being deliberate, not really being clear about what we're trying to express. With the second agreement that tells us to not take things personally, since most of us have many insecurities, we tend to take things too personally. When other people say things about us, when other people make their judgments about us, we're overly concerned about that. We're always trying to impress others, to gain approval of others. That's the tendency that's often present. Now, if we were to very literally take this suggestion to not take things personally, we could take it to the other extreme and completely ignore any feedback, any critiquing other people may have for us. It wouldn't be wise to take it to that extreme, since other people can provide valuable input or feedback. We can listen to what other people have to say or share. And if we are more secure within ourselves, if we're in a more centered and balanced state, we can use our discernment and we can take heed of anything that may be told to us that is useful, that could help us become a better person, that could help us function in a more positive or healthy way. Therefore, the idea to not take things personally doesn't mean that what other people may say or think doesn't have any useful or valid input for us. We just want to be careful that we're not so insecure, that we're not so easily offended or upset by other people's perspectives, that we easily react to that, or that we too willingly accept what other people think or say, rather than balancing that with our own self-awareness, with our own perspective, of what we feel and what we think. It is helpful to have both perspectives, our own view, our own perspective or belief about things, as well as to understand how other people may perceive things. Coming to the next agreement, the one that says to not make assumptions, we can recognize that much of human life is based on living with assumptions. Since we don't often have time to stop and think about things, we tend to carry assumptions into different aspects of our lives to make things simpler, to make it easier to go through our daily routine, to go through our interactions with other people. And thus, assumptions are something that we often find practical or useful to make it easier to go about our daily lives. However, it's important to understand that we are making those assumptions, and sometimes our assumptions turn out to be mistaken. So we don't want to become too attached to our assumptions. We also want to be mindful of this reality that we are carrying these assumptions into our everyday interactions. As an example, when I step outside the door from my home, I'm making the assumption that there isn't someone out there with a gun waiting to mug me. Now that is a pretty useful assumption, because if I were to think otherwise, then I would be always scared to step outside my door. So in that case, having that positive assumption, expecting the best, makes it easier to live fearlessly, to step outside my home and do whatever I might wish to do that day. But in other types of interactions, we may be making assumptions that are counterproductive. We may be assuming things that are inhibiting us from living our lives in a productive and healthy way. Therefore, we want to be more self-aware when we do make assumptions about things. Whenever we meet a person, we tend to make assumptions about that person. We may assume that they have similar values or beliefs, that they come from a similar culture. We may assume that their motivations are similar to our own. And perhaps the majority of the time that assumption will turn out to be accurate. However, it's important to be open to the possibility that other times that assumption will turn out to be inaccurate. I would say that it's not realistic to never make assumptions. There are times when they may have some use. They may help us go through our day more easily. We just don't want to be so attached to those assumptions, so oblivious to the fact that we're using assumptions, that we're not able to look beyond those assumptions. Coming now to the fourth agreement, to always do your best. We may need to be reminded of this because we do have a tendency at times to be lazy about things, to kind of go with the flow in terms of just following the inertia of whatever patterns, whatever routines we've been engaged in. We tend to accept mediocrity in our lives rather than striving for something better, striving to reach more of our potential. Each of us is born with a great deal of potential of what we can create, what we can share, what we can manifest in our lives. And oftentimes we kind of lose that enthusiasm, that excitement to make the most of our lives, and we just kind of remain stuck, we can remind ourselves that we can always improve ourselves, that we can always achieve more, we can always reach greater goals or greater visions in our lives. In a sense, we always are doing our best at the moment. So in any given moment, at any given time in our life, we're doing what we think is our best for that particular time. We're doing what we feel seems suitable or appropriate. However, it's important to realize that there may be more that we can achieve or more that we could be doing beyond what's being expressed in the particular present that we're engaged in. Thus, we don't want to be too hard on ourselves. We don't want to always question what we're doing. We don't want to denigrate ourselves and put ourselves down for not doing our best. We can accept that each of us is doing what seems the best for the time being. Even the people that we observe around us, who we may subjectively perceive as doing a miserable job of things in their lives, from their point of view, they may feel that they're doing their best. And so, to review these 4 agreements, it's important to not take things from one extreme and shift them to the other extreme, to not be obsessive or compulsive about carrying out what these 4 agreements on the surface level appear to be saying. In actuality, they're there to guide us toward more of a balance and toward greater self-awareness, as well as toward a commitment toward self-improvement. If we can be impeccable with our words, that just means we can be more conscious of how we're using words, of how those words are influencing our own consciousness, as well as influencing others. When we choose to not take things personally, we're choosing to be more discerning of how we think about and respond to what other people may think or say. We don't want to give away our own power too much. We want to be more centered, more confident in who we are, so that we are able to receive constructive feedback. We can learn to be aware of it when we are making assumptions, and to be able to go beyond those assumptions, to not be limited by them, and to find areas in our lives where it would be helpful to greatly reduce the amount of assumptions that we are living by. Assumptions aren't inherently bad or good. There are times when they may be practical to use, but we have to recognize that they are assumptions, and there are times when assumptions turn out to be false or invalid. And of course, to always do our best just means we can always strive for self-improvement. We can be aware that we're a work in progress. There is no final point or end point to our evolution. We're continuing to grow and evolve, to seek to become more conscious, more accomplished, to master more things about life, and committing to always doing our best means we don't get lazy about that. We don't become complacent. We don't just go through the motions of life. We actually seek to make the most of it, to really embrace all of life's potential. For those that are interested in their personal growth and spiritual development, I invite you to watch more of my video presentations. You can find my videos on YouTube, and you can also visit my website at www.phinsights.com and visit my Facebook page at facebook.com/Jedi Holistic Healing. I appreciate you taking your time to watch this video. I invite each of you to have a good day. Wishing you many blessings. Namaste.